So I guess I'm elected, so, I mean, that's not what I meant. I mean, I'm appointed. That was the conversation we were having earlier. And so we should start with a roll call?
Yes, and just speak in the mic.
Oh, okay, yes, I always forget that. Thank you.
Yes, okay, so Member Downs?
Here.
Member Grossman?
Here?
Member Kerr?
Here.
Member Marks?
Here.
And Member Parsley?
Here.
Okay, we start with approval of the minutes of February 5th. Could we have a motion?
I have moved that we accept the amendments. I mean, accept the, I'm sorry, that we accept the minutes.
And second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Acknowledgement if the lands were on or not.
Oh, yes, thank you. I will do that after we do the minutes. Any comments on the minutes? Any problems anybody sees? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Yes, and thank you, Greg. We should take a moment to honor the people who lived on this land and who lost the land, but should still be remembered for the contribution they made in really developing this area and making it livable. Let us move on to public comment. Any comments from the public on any items that are not on the agenda, that is?
I just want to thank the SEJC for not saluting the flag at the beginning of your meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Any announcements from you, Isabel?
No, I just wanted to thank all of you for coming to the training we had. It was last week. We were very happy by the turnout, and I hope you all got something out of it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
And then any comments from members of the commission? Seeing none, we will roll on. First item is election of officers. Commission will nominate and elect a chair and a vice chair. Any nominations?
I nominate Bart as the chair.
Do we second nominations?
We don't need seconds for nominations. Any other nominations for chair? Okay, well, I'll do it. We've had a habit on this commission of taking turns and going through the roster, so I'm happy to do that for this period. And a vice chair, nominations for vice chair?
I think Greg is next in line to be, I've been chair before, so you would be the next in line in terms of seniority. So I would nominate Greg as the vice chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to nominate you as the other senior person, so it's really up to you.
No, I think it's good for people to have turns, so let's, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we need to do motions and have a second, and then you can do it for both, so just
All right, so
a
let's,
motion
yeah,
for...
So I move that Bart Grossman be elected chair and that Greg Downs be elected as co-chair for the...
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
Vice chair.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that's done. Thank you. We're on to 6.2, sugar-sweetened beverage tax. Our task is to make recommendation to the council on how to spend the proceeds. Isabel, do you want to give us a little introduction here?
Sure. Let's see here.
Since there is a staff report.
Yes. So a little bit of background. In November 2016, Albany voters approved Measure 01, Ordinance 2016-02, a tax on sugar-sweetened beverages. Per the ordinance language, the council shall hold a study session annually to receive input and recommendations regarding the expenditure of proceeds from the tax and solicit recommendations from a number of organizations, including the city's Parks and Recreation Commission, which is now called Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Commission, this commission, the Social and Economic Justice Commission, Traffic and Safety, and the Albany Unified School District, and any other individuals or organization with expertise in the area, in areas such as public health issues, programs relating to diabetes, obesity, and sugary drink consumption. So in November of 2017, the SEJC prepared a recommendation for the council, and it is attached to the staff report for your information. And council approved a sugar-sweetened beverage tax expenditure plan on June 18, 2018, and we're in the process now of that plan. And the plan allocated funding for the installation of water bottle filling stations, crossing guard program, an educational campaign, free exercise and nutrition, cooking classes, a community fitness challenge, and the expenditure plan is, as approved, is attached also to the staff report. So now we're in getting ready for year 2 of the for a new expenditure plan for the council to adopt, and the commission now is tasked with coming up with a new recommendation to be presented at the next sugar-sweetened beverage tax workshop on April 1st, 2019. That's when council will be holding their work session on the topic.
Would you repeat that? When is that?
April 1st.
April 1st.
So it's Monday.
So this is it? This is our
Yes.
last meeting before that.
Right. Exactly. And then as far as the financials, the city has received a total of $440,954 in revenue from the sugar-sweetened beverage tax since January 2017 up to December 2018. And council at the last expenditure plan was for $289,076. And we expect to receive, again, approximately $250,000 as we continue on. The tax is pretty steady, a slight decline, but still, based on the revenue we've received to date and will continue to receive, the council could potentially adopt an expenditure plan as much as $250,000.
It should be declining. That was the whole point.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And we have a draft recommendation, which I believe Judy prepared. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we might as well use that as a focus for discussion.
And I think Margie submitted.
Yeah, comment on that. Yeah. And then we have the old recommendations as well. Does anyone object, just for matter of convenience, if we focus on Judy's draft?
No.
Okay.
And I'm aiming for 250.
You don't have to. It's up to 250. I mean, you could aim for the moon, and then the council will make decisions based on, the information they receive and how much they feel they is appropriate to spend. But it's up to you.
The heart of our recommendation, it sounds like, is really the proportion and not the exact dollar. Is that right?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what happened, just to give you a little bit of background, with the last expenditure plan, they received input from different commissions, and they basically picked from the different recommendations. There was not like one recommendation from an entire body that was accepted as the expenditure plan. So it's just kind of, they get the ideas and then formulate their own expenditure plan based on those ideas.
Okay. So, Judy, thanks very much for doing this. I have a couple of questions. Let me start by asking about the first item, the crossing guard program. Historically, this was not entirely paid for by the city, right? It was paid.
My understanding of the history, and I'm happy to be corrected if anybody has more precise information, but my understanding is that initially the crossing guards were partially funded from University Village funding.
Right.
The University of California at Berkeley revised their budget and took away that funding, and the city was left without a crossing guard. The decision was made by the city to substitute funding from the sugar-sweetened beverages tax to supplement the funding that was then missing from the university funding. So that was a kind of a handy little fix. It worked nicely, and it's still, I think, something that is consistent with the initial goals of the beverage tax, although it sort of came after the fact, and it was not part of the initial planning.
I mean, I agree, it doesn't seem as directly as some of the ones that are direct services toward diabetes or tooth decay, but I think it has a big impact on the number of people who walk. And when there was talk of it going away, I know from the elementary schools that my kids were at, there were, talk of a lot more people driving, which would have the effect of undermining the goals of this. So it both has a safety issue, but it also does have a fitness issue. So.
I would really like to set a maximum, though, amount that's to go for that. So they can't just take the whole pot and spend it on the crossing guards. They need to find money from someplace that, I'll go with the $100,000 max.
Okay.
I don't know how anybody,
I don't know, well,
can I say, last time it was $124,000 that got spent for the crossing guards.
yes, it was, that was the, they went with a outside service for the crossing guard. And I know that was the contract, I'm not sure, they talked about this last night. I think that, barring a change, I don't think the council, who is ultimately going to make this decision, I think that they're probably inclined to continue with that. At least that's the way it sounded last night. So I guess my thought process is that rather than, and there's, 6 items on here, I think realistically, what the best way for us to move something forward to get the council to pass is to whittle this down to probably 1 or 2 projects realistically. If we're looking at not only the council, which is going to make their own decisions, ourselves, traffic and safety, school district, and I'm sorry, Isabella, who else is?
Traffic and safety?
Traffic and safety.
Open parks, open space.
Parks, yes.
Parks and open space. So I think for the ideal way would be to, unfortunately, look at these and whittle it down to 1 or 2 items that we really think that that we can push for. I'm concerned as well, not necessarily for the crossing guards, but if anybody saw the article about Berkeley's soda tax, that it essentially it's been 3 years now and it's declined by 50%. 5 years? 5 years.
No, I said 50. I just want to make sure.
50%, yes.
Not 15,
It's declined, actually, 3 years in the soda tax. Soda consumption has declined 50%. So I think they're taking that off of the amount of taxes. So I think that the realistic, and I think the council probably sees this as well, I would hope, that they can't look to the soda tax to keep funding the crossing guards, and I think that they realize that. So I don't know the best way to do this, but I think that looking at these items and picking what we think is probably the best one or two to put forward to council is the best way to get something from our commission on the soda tax.
Let me suggest a slightly different approach, which is, since the amount of money that's included here is the total that they're looking at, what we might do is prioritize. We don't need to remove anything. We can simply say these are the ones we see are most important.
That's a great idea.
So let's see. A quick way to do that, first of all, does anybody want to discuss any of the particulars here? You had a piece, Margie, that...
I wanted to talk, and my suggestion is just on the next page, this little sentence, but Judy's suggestions, like 4, 5, and 6, when she looks at them and where who would be responsible, the senior center in all of those cases, bringing mobile dental clinics for disadvantaged school children, wellness clinics, that's for the seniors, and also the podiatry clinic. So they used to have a podiatrist that came to the senior center. That person no longer comes. They used to have an over 60 clinic at the senior center. They no longer have that. Approximately 20% of our population is 60 or over in Albany right now. And so I think that to put some money into senior health is a good investment for the community. And if we took 5 and 6 and put them, they're both 30,000, and then just put 60,000 that would go to the senior center, they would really like to buy a new blood pressure machine. They have a blood pressure machine, I guess, that breaks down all the time. They'd like to have some different presentations on health. They'd like to do diabetes checks, wellness checks, blood pressure checks. They have no money to do that kind of thing right now. So I'm proposing that we give the senior center the $60,000 to go toward senior health in Albany.
And then
Instead
you want to
of
specify...
these issues 5 and 6, get rid of issues 5 and 6 and just say 60,000 would go for senior health, and then they could say where to spend the money.
Okay.
Margie, one of the reasons that I wanted to be a little more specific rather than just sort of do a sort of a broadcast was there are some goals with regard to inclusion of seniors and access for seniors and senior health, specifically in item number, which one is it, 5, I think.
Yeah.
Trying to at least give some seed money to the idea of a case management program for at-risk Albany seniors. So while that might well fall within goals that are already in place by the Recreation Services Senior Center staff, to my mind, it's good to sort of give a prompt to that process as well, because it's consistent with our work plan and the city's work plan in terms of assisting and supporting aging in place for seniors. So, I mean, I don't think we can be too prescriptive, and in fact, I know that these programs will become what they become. But I think we can give a little more guidance to them. I want to kind of reflect a little bit on Brian's statement earlier. Anything that we use this funding for needs to be viewed from diminishing returns. We're not going to continue to have the amount of money that we hope that we're not going to have the amount of money that we have now. Maybe we could tax vaping machines or something, and that might be an interesting strategy to continue to have revenue from various sins in the city. But we do need to know that this is going to the general fund, that it may or may not continue to be an ongoing program, but it is something that is consistent with the council's goals, consistent with the commission's goals, and something that we all agree on as a commission. So putting 4, 5, and 6 together is fine, in my view. And we could also think potentially about just letting somebody else pick up the public safety goal. I mean, we don't have to have that.
I was going to say, I think, I I think we would just get rid of 1 and 2.
Okay.
If that's, I mean, 1 is already taken up by the council, really. And like I said, I think they're probably going to fund that where we prioritize that or not. The water filling stations, is that an ongoing process, Isabel, or is
No.
they're?
They're being installed now, but we don't anticipate installing others unless there's other locations
It
identified.
will require maintenance and.
But they will require some maintenance, but I'm not sure of the
And maybe that's
cost
something.
and-
Maybe that's something that the Parks and Open Space may want to look into.
Yeah, we don't.
Regards.
really-
I know that
So
we're
we can,
Yeah.
we
currently
can
putting
slash that.
filling stations in city buildings and Memorial, I think. I'm not sure about the other parks. So I think we should focus on 3 through 6. I don't have an issue. I think there's I think podiatry clinics are incredibly important. Myself having type 2 diabetes, I know it is, it's not fun. And going to the podiatrist every 3 months is a necessity. So, and it's, when I was taking care of my grandmother, it was something that was incredibly important. And when she was at assisted living, they came in, but it was also expensive. So I like the idea of podiatry. I'm not, the only, I really think the mobile medical clinics for unhoused persons, if I was ranking them, I would probably go with that number 1 right now. And just because I don't think it, if you take a look at our neighbor in Berkeley and how they are struggling with unhoused persons, I think that's priority. We have several unhoused persons in Albany, and obviously medical care for an unhoused person might not be a top priority versus, finding housing, finding food, finding general necessities, and I think I think that would probably go a very long way. I would like to hear more about the dental clinics for economically disadvantaged school-aged children. I don't know what the demographics of that are, and if we have anything from the district on how we could find out the numbers on that. And I don't have a problem of rolling 5 and 6 in together.
Okay, well, let me see, where I hear us being at the moment is the crossing guard program. We're not going to make a priority. We may not mention it, or we might mention it last, since we know it's going to happen anyway. I'm hearing the mobile recommendation that mobile medical clinics be our number 1 priority. Could I get a show of hands on that?
Well,
That was just mine.
what do you mean by a mobile clinic? I mean, is it a place that comes twice a year? Or, that's my picture of it. But I want something that comes every week, or, they had it every other, we had the podiatrist every other week at the senior center when they were coming. So what do you mean by mobile clinics?
Well, the target population for item 3 is different than
Yeah.
than the clinics on the other pages. So the target population for item 3 is unhoused homeless people.
Okay.
When I researched the current availability of mobile clinics, outreach, really, these are outreach clinics, and they're clinics that are based primarily from Oakland. What I could see on their rotation schedule was the closest they got to West Berkeley or Albany or anywhere in the North County area was about 40th in Oakland, 40th Street. So they're not really getting up this far north. I really don't know, and there's a lot to be determined, and it really would be a request for proposal to the agency that's providing this to bring the service closer to the city of Albany. And I really am not at all sure how it would work or if they even have the capacity to provide the service. I'm just saying we could have some money, and it would be targeted money for that purpose.
Okay.
So that's about all I can tell you about that.
Does Berkeley still use the suitcase clinic?
The Suitcase Clinic and Berkeley Free Clinic are still site-specific, but outreach to communities in their location it only goes in Oakland. It's only, as far as I know, only in Oakland.
Okay.
And I'm currently looking on Berkeley Food and Housing. We don't know if they have any mobile clinic or.
No, they don't.
No, they don't.
Can I ask how you arrived at the cost estimates?
Pie in the sky guess.
Sure, that's fine. That's how I would have done it. I just didn't know if there was a specific money threshold that we knew would make a difference.
One or two times a year, I really figured 8 hours of 2 providers
Sure,
is kind of as close as I could get to that. So
makes sense.
So
I put out the $60,000 number for the senior center. My thought was it would be approximately $1,000 a week to spend on some kind of health care
Right.
need for the senior population. So that's why I came up with that number.
Well, if you look at what we've got at the moment, we've got 3 points, basically, and they're all 60,000, so that's nice and proportionate. And it really is just a question, if people are comfortable with that, of putting them in order. So let me do a little hand show here, just to get a straw vote, not a commitment. How many people would put the mobile medical clinics as number 1? 2.
I would, but I was going to mention maybe before we start to do that, we might want to be here from the public and see if they have any ideas as well.
That's a good idea, yeah. All right, let's do that now. Any public comment on this?
including, please, if you have thoughts on prioritizing them, because we'll come back to that.
That's where we're going to end up.
I guess one thing is just, I was walking down San Pablo a few months ago, and there were 2 vans parked there. One was Needle Exchange, and the other one, I'm pretty sure, was Berkeley Free Clinic, although I was just looking online, and I don't see them listed, but there was a mobile clinic, and it was like around Gilman and San Pablo, but I don't know who they were. I got their brochures, I chatted with them. They also provide all sorts of other things. But anyway, it might be interesting to find out who those people are, and I wish, if I thought of it, I would have brought their brochures with me. I think that when you look at what, like, for instance, Berkeley Free Clinic offers, they offer a range of things. They offer dental, they offer vision, and then they also offer physical. And I think that there was a way of combining those and not having it just target, like, dental health, for example, impacts your entire body. If you are having dental issues, you have preterm babies. There's all sorts of ramifications of having untreated gum and teeth and dental caries. It really is systemic, so it's not a minor thing. And then of course vision. If you don't have glasses, then you can't drive, you can't get a job, you can't. There's like so many factors that all work together. So I think if there were a way of combining these and have it not limited to select groups, the podiatrist, the same story. I don't know if you're familiar with remote area medical, but they provide clinics mainly on the east side of the country, but they bring in everything for that very reason. So I would really encourage you to think of it as being medical or just health related, I guess, and really covering children, adults, unhoused. I think people are unhoused or marginally housed or unstably housed. But all of these work together, and in the long run, they save a ton of money because people don't go to emergency rooms. They don't, there's a lot of ramifications of not treating the whole person. So I would encourage you to think about it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hi, good evening, Council. Hi, my name is
The
Jeremiah.
council, we're the,
Committee. Yeah, prioritizing. I know that everybody has a different opinion, right? Well, I think everybody's gut instinct is the right decision. We talk about money, numbers, and other people. Let's leave it up for other people all we want to make those decisions. But coming from this committee, it's difficult for kids, children, school children that need crossing guards to come here to these meetings to speak up for themselves. They don't have a voice. So prioritize, even if you already think you know what someone else is going to do. It looked pretty good coming from this committee that school zones is number one. And what's also number one, which I'll go number two because put the kids first. Albany's all about schools. And if we don't put our school children first, it's not common sense. So people that need housing. I know I'm kind of biased on this opinion because I'm in the situation to where I need housing. Graduated Albany High in 2001. Long Beach State, became a longshoreman, got injured. Homeless on the streets, living in an RV for 4 years. So this committee, this commission, just like traffic and safety, social and economic justice, there's big words there. And traffic and safety, I said they should rename the committee to Safety and Traffic Committee, because safety comes first. But it seems like they're putting it second, even in the name. So anyway, this is just my opinion. Everybody's gonna have an opinion on this. What you wanna do is up to you. But school zones is first, and people that need housing is also first. Those two, it's hard to say which one's first or second. But they all need attention. And like I'm saying, these kids can't speak up for themselves. But it should be a priority for every committee or every commission, school zones, because these kids are our top priority. So, and I've been figuring out housing in an RV for 4 years, so I'll figure that out. I'm a grown adult, but these kids can't come here and speak up for themselves. So consider that they don't have a voice coming to these meetings. So someone's got to look out for these kids. Parents, someone, I don't have any school kids, in the school system, but I've been doing what I can for at least 10 years trying to get school zones. We still don't even have school zones in the city. The slowest speed in Albany is 25 miles an hour. I've been going to traffic and safety, this, that. They've approved it to city council. Everybody thinks it's a good idea. Everybody appreciates it. No one's taken action. It's been 10 years for school zones. And getting these crossing guards, the funding, that's not longevity. That's not long-term thinking. Soda tax, that money should have went towards education. So anyway, just think about it. Thanks.
thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I've been affiliated with the Albany Senior Center for a number of years now, and I am a strong advocate. I understand Julie's viewpoint of the overall health picture, because one leads to another if we don't take care of our citizens and our children. But the simplicity simply of bringing a podiatrist to the senior center is so important, because the simple care of trimming nails, which a lot of our seniors are unable to do their own nail trimming and such, going to the podiatrist through their medical plan, that the podiatrist with the medical plan will not do that. So just simply maintenance of the feet, be it that they're diabetic or not, and we know if you have diabetes, it's very, very important, as Brian was saying. So I love the whole picture, but I think that maybe focusing on our seniors and the basic thing of blood pressure checks and taking care, maintaining their foot care is very important.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Hi, gang. I think it's all important, but I'm really concerned about how much money is being used towards some burgeoning bureaucracies in our little town. I think the money should be gone as directly as possible to the users, the beneficiaries, and not just paying people to administer programs to collect their own paychecks. So I'm concerned about that. A lot of times when you're homeless, you can't get anywhere. My car broke down about 6 weeks ago. I'm kind of stuck right now. I'm trying to resolve the issue, but a lot of it is not getting someplace, medical, food, food pantries, services, whatever they are. So like mobile medical clinics is a great idea. And it should come in every week or so and not every 6 months or something, because your health can't wait. When you're homeless, your health deteriorates a lot faster. I'm diabetic. It's gotten a lot worse. I can't get to medical to deal with it. So when you're diabetic and homeless, where do you store your insulin, you know? So there's a lot of issues where we need these people to come to us. We're always told, well, go here and go there. Go to these services, go to that place, go to that food pantry, go get the free meal over here. And the logistics of being homeless is staggering. You don't have time and energy and money to get places. And when you get there, you're treated poorly anyway. So the more that we can provide for our people here in this town, the better. With the caveat of using the money towards the users and the beneficiaries, not paying huge paychecks to people to have a job that they enjoy, but the rest of us don't. As long as we're homeless, we can find ways to justify expenditures of paying for bureaucrats. I'm an advocate of bringing that money directly to building housing for us, because a lot of these issues would resolve themselves if we had housing. Persons get in housing, their health improves, their diet improves, their outlook improves. This is kind of an aside. I recently had to insure my vehicle, and because I was homeless, they would not allow me to do it, so I was sent elsewhere. Evidently, when you're homeless, have no place to garage your car, you cannot get insurance. If there was an address that was provided to people who live in Albany, who need the umbrella of a physical address, just an address, that would make a huge difference for people, and that's something that we ought to think about in this town, as some place to provide them. Just say they can use the senior center or the city hall or something like that, where they can get insurance legally without having to invent a place to live. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So just to review, the items we have here at the moment are the crossing guard program, the mobile medical clinics, which have a focus on unhoused persons, the mobile dental, which focuses on school-aged children, and senior health programs.
I would be in favor of putting the unhoused medical program first. I would change the amount to $40,000 a year. I think our unhoused population is not as anywhere near as large as our senior population. And so I think, I'm looking at how many people come to the showers every week. And basically, we're at our maximum there. We're having to turn people away. We don't have enough time to give this many people who come and want the showers they need, which is another subject. But I would change the amount to $40,000.
Does anybody feel ready to make an overall proposal? Anybody or do you want to still talk about the items?
Well, I would go with 40,000 for the, for homeless. I think 60,000 for the disadvantaged school children, dental, and 60,000 for senior health.
In that order?
Yes. No, I would put this, yes, in that order. Yeah.
Okay, and the crossing guards?
I wouldn't put them.
Okay. Okay. Do I have that, can you make a motion then?
Well, I don't know how other people feel on the commission, if they're, how they're, they might.
You make a motion, then we'll
Okay,
talk.
I move that we, in this order, we give $40,000 for public health, targeting unhoused individuals living in areas not served by current program locations, that we give $60,000 for mobile dental clinics for disadvantaged school children, and $60,000 towards senior health, in that order.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I have a friendly amendment. I see no reason to prioritize. There's going to be enough mishmashing of this. It's going to continue. I think we can just agree that they're all of equal priority and move ahead. I don't think that anything's going to be served by saying we don't think this is more important than the other.
I agree with that, absolutely.
Everybody on the same page with that?
So the motion then becomes to change the dollar amount to $40,000 on item 3, recommended maximum, to combine items 5 and 6 and have a $60,000 recommended maximum based on RFPs and a lot of information still to be gathered, and item 4 stays the same as it is currently written.
Yes.
So that's the motion. So
Somebody want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Comments, discussion?
My only concern, I don't have a problem, my only concern is I'm wondering if the council would want us to prioritize. And maybe that's just me overthinking it.
Brian, I attended the prioritization session last year, and I assume, Isabella, you may be able to guide us on this, but I assume it's going to take the same format, which was basically sticky papers on a wall. And the prioritization that followed that really was the council's purview.
Right, we haven't determined the exact process for the workshop on April 1st yet, but the ultimate prioritization is going to come from council if they decide to prioritize. I mean, they didn't really, they prioritized here, but they, the last expenditure plan, there is a priority, but there was enough funding to fund all of them. So.
My feeling is if we list them in the order we discussed, that effectively represents a kind of priority.
I don't have a problem. I just, yeah, that's, my only issue is I'm not, much like we lowered the 60,000 to 40,000, because I agree with you, Margie, that there probably is a limited number of unhoused persons in Albany. I don't think we have those numbers quite yet from the count, but I don't know what the numbers are of the economically disadvantaged school-age children who aren't getting dental, and that's kind of where I'm a little hung up on it. And I would feel more comfortable if I had numbers from the school district, and I'm not quite sure if that would be through their lunch program or.
It's kind of how I was envisioning it.
Yeah. But I think if we're looking at it as a to be determined, I think that's fine. We can just list it the way it is. I want to make sure that we, in putting the 5 and 6 together, that we make sure that it's a mobile clinic as well as podiatry. I think that the podiatry is incredibly important, especially for seniors.
So that was the agreement, that it would be health services and to be determined. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I am.
Aye.
Wait, did the public have a comment first?
Well, we've had public comment.
Okay.
Is anybody dying to say something? Okay.
So just for, we'll talk.
I would be more comfortable if we could get some exact figures of what the mobile dental, the senior health, and the public health for homeless. I mean, where do these figures come from? If we could get some more information, unless you guys have more information that I'm not aware of, that, yes, we have fewer homeless people than senior people. Sometimes those populations overlap. So I'm wondering if there could be more information gathered. Maybe this 40,000 seems kind of low. Maybe even the 60 and the 60,000s for the dental and the senior health. I don't know where those figures come from. If someone could answer that for me, and can we be more flexible on those amounts? Maybe it's a lot more that we need, and just to allocate 40 and 60 and 60 may not do what we need for them to do.
Well, I explained how I came to my 60,000, which was giving them $1,000 a week, plus a little extra to spend on health. So
Is that a realistic figure? I don't know anything
that they
about
could
it.
do
Yeah.
with it what they can do with it,
Right.
That it would be enough to bring in a podiatrist and to bring in a blood pressure check and diabetes. Okay, I'm sorry.
We shouldn't be having a debate here.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay, well, that was my question.
Okay.
If there can be some more precise figures before we agree and then find out that it's woefully insufficient.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So the circumstance is we have to make our recommendation tonight because this is the last meeting we have.
Right,
before-
so what I was going to say is, if, Judy, you want to resubmit this to me based on the changes, and just adding, as discussed tonight, and then we'll include that as the recommendation.
Is everybody all
Council.
right with that?
Yes.
I'd be happy to
I'm
do
cool
that.
with that.
I'd be happy with that.
All right, so we're in agreement on these priorities. They're not priorities, they're a list.
And they'll be
And
numbered
we'll-
1, 2, and 3.
Yes, and we'll charge Judy with making the
Making 1,
appropriate
2, and 3?
corrections. And,
I will submit it to Isabel.
okay,
Yes.
and let me just suggest, too, that if we've reduced the amount to 40 from 60, but we didn't do anything else with the 20, right? So there's no reason to reduce that. What we might do is provide a range and let council decide.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be the council that's ultimately going to decide, and at that point, we might have some more target numbers, and I think ultimately they're going to be the ones to decide the amount of money that is put forth on any project.
Yeah, so the numbers really should be in parentheses, and let council decide how they want it. All right, okay, so I think we're satisfied with that, and our next task is to work on the work plan. And Isabel, do you want to give us an introduction?
Sure. So you have so what I did is you have the work plan that was previously approved. And what I did is you should have a hard copy in front of you, is I took the work plan, the previous work plan, and moved what was under policy review and initiatives as under recent initiatives and accomplishment, just to get you started. It's a draft document, and then kind of went through the draft council strategic plan, and started to outline what was in your previous work plan, but wordsmithed it a little bit based on the new language in the council strategic plan draft. So I just did that just to get the commission to, just to get organized a little bit in your discussion.
Give us a
It's
start.
really just it's a working document. It's a starting point. You can do what you want with it. But I thought
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, I know ordinarily we only take action item notes, but if we're going to have discussion here about our thoughts about these things and not finalize it tonight, I wonder if you could just keep some rough notes, otherwise.
Yes, well, that's why I started this, because
Yeah.
I thought you could start working on this plan, and then I'll just take
Yeah.
notes as we go.
Good.
And then I'll bring you the updated document based on the discussion you have tonight.
Excellent, okay. So I have no problem with following this as a template, and then we can modify it as we go.
And just also keep in mind that the council strategic plan is still in draft mode, so it has not been fully approved by the council. We don't anticipate big changes, but you don't have to finalize your work plan this evening. Probably by your next meeting, the council will have an approved strategic plan, so you can probably finalize.
Could you
it.
help me with the dates on these items? Because I know there was some confusion after I listened to the council meeting. So the council will be working on a work plan that will finish June 2019?
They're still working on all that, so I can't really.
So are we?
You're working on the 2019-2020 work plan.
Okay, thank you.
So for the time of your tenure.
Term of our.
Yeah.
It's 2 years, isn't it?
2 years, yes,
So it's, all right.
yes.
Okay, so let's talk about promoting housing availability and what we want to say about that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I wanted to add, under number 1, I wanted to add maybe number 2, investigate funding sources to be used for diverse housing projects in Albany. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Lots of other cities are regulating Airbnbs. They're taking rental units off the market. They're charging people fees to rent them, or a percentage of the rental fee that goes toward housing, or, affordable housing, or whatever we want to call it. So that's just one example of what I think that I'm talking about looking at under that subject.
Okay. I'd like to weigh in a little bit, too, on the first one, not on the rent review. I see that as a separate one. I would like us to be reviewing housing construction proposals to assess affordability by the Albany community. What I'm saying here is, I think we're going to be under a lot of pressure from the state. I don't know if you saw the Chronicle today, but
Yeah.
there are 200 laws in place that are being discussed
Bills.
to require cities to build and really to override local control. So I'm concerned that we may wind up in this town with a lot of unaffordable housing. So I would like us to have a role in looking at construction proposals and from a perspective of social justice. The other issue about affordability is, there are 4 levels of affordability. And generally, what I've seen locally is when there's a requirement for a certain amount of affordable housing, they don't specify what level of affordable. The highest level of affordable is like almost $90,000. So I don't know exactly who that's affordable for, but certainly it's not, the very low-income people that, that are probably in greatest need of housing. So I would like to add, review all housing construction proposals to assure affordability by the Albany community.
My question would be, when you say all housing, what exact, are you talking about somebody that's building an in-law unit?
No, I'm talking about multifamily housing.
Multifamily housing.
So review all multifamily housing, and we'd be talking about new construction,
Yeah.
not renovation of
No,
existing.
right, new construction.
So review
And
all
that would be
new multifamily.
after it's approved by planning and zoning, or at what point in the process would we be doing our review?
I would think, I'm not sure, actually. I probably would want to do it early. Once it's approved by planning and zoning, it may be too late.
I guess my question would be, what do you envision that we would do? I mean, that's where I'm kind of, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm just not sure what we would do if it's not if it's not part of the rent review process.
Well, I would see it, the planning and zoning is going to review a construction proposal. I would see us perhaps making a recommendation to either to planning and zoning or to the council as to whether this project meets the affordability needs of the community. I haven't thought through all the details about exactly how that would happen, but I just feel like there needs to be a kind of a social justice perspective on housing that comes into play when decisions are made to approve construction.
I guess I see this more, what I hear your concerns as being, and I may be not hearing correctly, but you're concerned about inclusion,
Yeah.
low-income people. And I'm wondering if, when we look at Objective 2.2, continue to promote community-wide inclusivity, one of the thoughts that I'd had listening to some of the agenda items that have been discussed by SEJC is everything that goes through planning and zoning has an environmental impact report. What if we had, instead of an environmental impact report, a diversity impact report or an inclusivity impact report that was, so again, we're stuck with, I don't know where that, in the process that fits, but we're really not talking just about housing. We're
No,
talking
that's right.
about a much broader range of things that happen that we want to be sure that we're checking the boxes on inclusivity.
I think that, I don't know if we have I guess we have the power to request that, and I would strongly support it. And I think I want to make sure, was your suggestion that we ask for that, not just for housing, but for everything that goes through planning, or for, for council when they have, when they're not acting under time duress to
Right.
solicit
So
input
if
on
we were
inclusivity.
to have something under item 2.2, inclusivity, and have sort of a review process for inclusion, then under our item objective 1.2, promote housing availability, we'd kind of take care of that. So it's kind of a backdoor into that, but
It could go either way. I don't even have to resolve this now.
Right,
We're putting out ideas.
I just see it very cumbersome for us to review housing construction proposals. I know nothing about housing.
Well, I don't think we would necessarily be looking at all of the details of the proposal. We're really looking at whether it provides for people who have need.
Yeah.
That's just that piece of it. Whether it's part of housing or part of inclusiveness, I really don't care that much. I have some other thoughts about inclusiveness, but I just do think that there needs to be a check. Because I think we're going to be under a lot of pressure to build market rate housing. And there has to be a voice that says, we need something else.
My only concern with that would be that we don't get into a weird legal area with overstepping our bounds, or, obviously, nothing, only really the council and planning and zoning have that quasi judicial power to some extent, traffic and safety, but for mostly planning and zoning and council. So I don't think there's an issue. I don't want us, I guess I would worry about the taking. If we were to, I don't even know if that would be, if that would fall under that. I don't want us to.
I think it would, since we have no legal authority. We're just
Yeah.
making a recommendation. And the council and planning and zoning can ignore that recommendation.
Okay.
All right, but anyway, I want to get that into the discussion, and we'll figure it out. Anything else on one? Review and evaluate, I'm in the wrong place. I'm sorry, I'm over here. Got so many pieces of paper here. on the housing element policy. So we have two proposed changes there, and we'll work on those. And we can massage this draft. The rent review ordinance, I see that council has already made a change on that. Isabel?
Let's see. Yes, because the rent review program has been implemented. So based on the recommended update and current status, basically would be the SCJC would receive updates regarding the rent review program and provide a recommendation to council in November 2019 after the program has been implemented for 1 year.
Any additions to that? There's a piece, I don't know if we need to be explicit about this. I do want to, I think we should be, reviewing the process and seeing whether it's effective. We also may discover through the rent review process, and this was part of why we put it in place, what's happening to people and how people are being affected in the community by rent increases. Right now, we have no way of knowing that except anecdotally. So if we discover that there are some issues, that, repeating issues that go beyond the individual, I would like to see us be able to make a report to council about that as well.
That's what this is, basically.
Okay, so
You could provide a recommendation on, anything based on the updates that you received, the information you received. You could choose to make a recommendation on.
So we might see,
anything
for
related.
example, a lot of, there's a pattern of rental increases in a particular development, for example. And we want to raise that beyond the level of just individuals going to rent review. But there's a collective problem that needs to be addressed. How that gets addressed, that needs further conversation. But, just dealing with these issues one person at a time, I think, is not going to be adequate.
Do you feel like the language there gives us the
Maybe
room
it's
to do
open
what we
enough.
want? Or do
Maybe
you
it's
feel
open
like
enough.
we need to change it to accomplish what you want?
I think it's probably open enough, as long as, everybody understands that.
And you'll be receiving quarterly updates,
Yeah.
from Echo Housing, from the reports that they provide. So based on that information, over time, you'll probably be able to formulate any recommendations if you
You
want.
might want to keep it as open as
Okay.
possible, if we want to look at different things.
Okay. What I think I'll do is, as we go through point by point, I'll invite community input on each of the points, rather than wait till the end, because there's so many different things here. So on the council's strategic goal, foster a healthy and sustainable urban village, we've discussed these items. Anyone have a comment?
So this is like housing availability and...
Right. Yeah. And let's just make a note of these, Isabel, and then we can, when we go back through, we'll have the benefit of all that input.
I'd like to start by thanking Bart for calling it a social justice look at housing availability, kind of putting a social justice slant on looking at it. I don't know if the housing element that we have in place as part of the general plan has requirements for the arena, for the requirement that we're not meeting, so that we already have something that's not being enforced. So it seems like one step would be to look at those numbers and see how short we're falling, which we are falling quite short. So that would be, it's right there in the housing element. And then the rent review program, I think I love the idea of hearing from real people about their real problems with the real raises in their real rent. So I think that's a great idea, and I don't know if a quarterly report. I don't know how people are knowing. The problem. One of the problems in Albany is letting people know about anything, and so I know that was something I forgot to mention in the other thing about outreach, about the sugar thing and how it's going to be done. And I saw it was all basically like social media and a billboard, I think, was the thing. And you need person-to-person interactions and letting people know and going to meetings and telling people about this. So there may be people whose rents have gone up and they don't know where to go to tell people, and there may be a lot of stories out there. And if there was a personal way that you could gather those stories instead of waiting for a quarterly report and expecting people to know that they can do that. A lot of this stuff is going to depend on actually being, as commission members or maybe involving community members to really go out and talk to people face to face, show up at the senior center, show up at the community center, show up anywhere and say, hey, did you know this? Did you know you can report this? Did you know this about whatever it is that you're trying to enforce? I say this a lot at both meetings, but it isn't happening. It just isn't happening. So anyway, those are my comments so far. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. And Brian had mentioned that when we talked about this last month, and perhaps adding something on communication. So.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and we'll come to that. So, thank you. Moving on to
There might be
engage.
one more public
I'm
comment.
sorry, go ahead, Lee.
Housing is a social justice issue. We cannot pass the buck because we don't know how to read floor plans or talk about square footage or whatever where the windows go. That's not our concern, though it's of interest to me. We are not overstepping our bounds by being involved in this process. And the idea of doing a diversity, inclusivity impact report is awesome. I think we should be involved in all these processes, because if we don't house our own people, or the people who are low income and are stretching to try to pay rent here, we need to address those issues in a very strong, proactive way and be involved from step one with these. I've been waiting 1.5 years for housing. I've been homeless 3.5 years. As I said a minute ago, my car broke down. I've been living in it. I can't drive it for 6 weeks, 5 weeks. This is a devastation. Where is the housing that could relieve my hurt and my pain? I've given up on the wait lists. I've given up on the services that theoretically supply us housing. I'm on my own with this. I'm going to graduate school. I'm training to be a librarian where I will be paid $70,000 a year to start. That is more money than I have seen in years and years and years combined. I am educated and smart and able to do these things. A lot of people aren't, and they need the help. But the bottom line is they need housing. That's the social justice issue that we have in front of us. They don't need Band-Aids and services. They don't need a lot of this other stuff on the edges. Get the housing, and we as this council, you as this council, should be highly involved in that process to make sure that people's housing needs are addressed and fulfilled. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the strategic plan goal 2, engage our diverse community. Comments on that?
Do we want to go in order 2-1 and 2-2, then 2-3, or do we want to just do them all together? You're the chair.
I'm looking at 2 different plans here. So we did.
So we did those. So I just was asking on goal 2. It's got. 2,
I see.
2, 2,
Yeah, I
2,
see.
3.
Yes.
Do you want to do them
yeah.
in order, or do you want
Let's
to
do them in order? Yeah.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, if,
No.
yeah, if people want to throw something new in, that's possible too.
So we're starting with 2-1, connect with and engage the community.
So Judy had talked about moving your portion down to this section of it.
I thought, I don't want to take words in her mouth, but I thought possibly on 2-2.
Yeah, inclusivity,
So,
Yeah.
yeah, the diversity impact report would go under 2.2.
right.
Okay, so
That's
we're,
how I understood it, yeah.
okay, good. I just want to make sure we got that.
There's something that I'm having trouble actually putting into words, but There's something backwards about engaging our diverse community. We're not a community without all of us. And to try to figure out how to bring more voices to the conversation is, I think, a big part of what we really are talking about. But there's an assumption that we're where you have to come. And I just want to make that comment and leave it at that, because I really don't have the fully fleshed language to bring it all the way forward. But I do think that inclusivity is a big part of what we want to do, and communication, which was what Brian was talking about earlier, is a big part of that inclusivity. I was delighted to see on the website, a few months ago, I looked on the website and tried to pull something up in a language other than English, and the button wasn't working, but the button's working now, and I'm very happy about that. And I wonder if there isn't also a way that we can start to look at language and the availability of this information that we're talking about here right now in English to communities in other languages. But
I think, I was trying to think of it in a more specific way, because it's so broad and in terms of things that we could actually do. And so there are a couple of pieces that occurred to me. First of all, we should review city efforts to reach out and accommodate diverse groups. You know, what is the city? I mean, it's the city that does outreach. It's not us. So that we should be looking at what's going on with that.
Well,
Should be. Can I just?
Yes.
Yeah. We should review the diversity training programs, for example, that are provided to staff and you know, and city workers, so that and so that we can see whether or not people have, you know, are treated appropriately, and whether people are prepared to do that kind of work. And we should be identifying issues of prejudice and bigotry and recommend actions regarding issues of prejudice, bigotry, harassment, blockage of appropriate civil rights and social justice by city staff, agencies, and institutions in the community. We should be looking at, in fact, violations of social justice that result in people being excluded. What are the barriers that exist? And that requires us to become, in fact, a social justice commission, which at the moment we're not really. What I mean by that is when you remember the meeting that the city council had recently, when they were talking about changing the name to Human Services. And a number of people spoke against that, saying it's important that the city has a place where people can come when they have social justice issues. Now, as the work plan emerges, in fact, we can't really respond very effectively to social justice issues that arise if they're not on the work plan. So I think we need a structure within this commission whereby people can come here and point out that they're being treated inappropriately, that they're being denied their rights, that staff have treated them in a way that represents prejudice, where we can collect that kind of information and be able to make recommendations about it. I mean, that's what a social justice commission is in most places. It's, you know, it's a place where people can come to raise issues. And also, the other thing we've been talking about, it's a place where actions by the city that have implications for social justice can be reviewed and commented upon. So if whatever, you know, legislative proposal is going through the council, we ought to have eyes on to see whether, in fact, it's consistent with social justice. So anyway, that's a lot of words, but you understand what I'm trying to say. I think we need to be reviewing what the city is doing. I think we need to make the city aware where there are inappropriate behaviors, where, you know, there's a denial of civil rights, and we ought to be seeing that people who work for the city are appropriately trained and that there's appropriate outreach. It's not, we can't do that. We tried, but there aren't enough of us. and we don't have enough time. It's really the city's job to do that. So that's my speech.
No, I think that's very, it's very well said. I also think in terms of, thinking about implementing the way that I understood Judy's prior proposal, is there a way that we could phrase it of provide input to council on where we're not waiting for them to ask us? I mean, they can ignore it, but can we simply, be monitoring? I know some of you all are much, have been much more consistent about, following what council does than I have, but we could take turns or whatever monitoring things that we know are up for review, so that we're introducing those here and we're sending our input and they can do what they want with it rather than to ask them to solicit our input and to risk that. I also think a couple of other things that, we had asked, and it's, we had asked last year, and, we could put it on the work plan in case it isn't, put in place. But what unites several of these is, related to our request last year for a survey to give us a method of accessing the needs of the community rather than us, sort of speculating on those. And so, I don't know if we need to frame that in the work plan or if it sits enough behind several of them.
Well, they should be in the work plan. We'd made a request to council and they haven't responded, but didn't really have a way to respond.
Right.
If we put it in the work plan, they will.
Okay, so that's great. Another thing that I was thinking, and I don't know if this is the right timing, so if not, then I apologize for bringing it up out of time. On issues like these, it might be useful to have a youth member, right? And I know that that's not our power to create.
We can request it.
But we could request it, and, we could leave it to council to select, or we could ask council to ask, the high school principal, or, whatever is the way that youth members are selected. But I think, it's an important way to get that voice on there. We're not, to make sure that we're getting that perspective. And the other thing that I don't have, that I think speaks to several of the things you mentioned, as well as Judy's proposal and some of the things I have, but that an overall goal I'd have for Objective 2.2 is for it to feel more concrete, not in a limiting way, but in a way that really does, as you say, empower us on some of the other issues. We really do have specific tasks. And that's great, and it would be a great thing if this year we really came out with inclusivity, having specific tasks that we're doing so that we know at the end of the year which of these worked, which of these didn't, what tasks do we need to add next year rather than aspirations.
According to the housing element, 30% of the Albany population is Asian. And I feel like there needs to be some, like if you look at commissions, if you look at the city council, look at the number of Asians that are on those bodies, they're certainly nowhere near 30% or 10% or probably even 5%. And so I would like us to do some kind of special, I don't know, we need to change that, make it more reflective of what our city looks like.
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is that it's not our job to do that. It's the council's job to do that. It's our job to serve as watchdogs, to say to the council, you're not doing appropriate outreach when you appoint people to commissions. The model you have now is people apply.
Of course, none of us would be on this commission.
Well, that's all right. The problem is, the problem is that just having open applications when people don't know about them well enough, when there's no way of communicating effectively, and when various communities, don't perceive themselves included, it's very hard to, for them to apply. There needs to be some outreach. Council people need to be reaching out to their constituents to identify populations that should be represented.
I think one of the things that I struggle with the most in this is it's so broad and it is so mind-boggling in some ways. And we don't know what we're going to measure. We don't even know where we are in space right now in terms of the diversity or the inclusion of the community. And one of the things that some cities have done is a diversity report card. Pick a point in time. It's May 15th, and every program, every staff, every council member, every commissioner, there's a diversity measure that's done at that point in time. And it's a point-in-time measure of diversity in the city. And then you do it again May 15th the next year, and again and again and again. And if you're moving ahead, then you're seeing a change in the trend. But right now, we don't know. I mean, we know that we don't look very diverse up here, but we don't really have a measure of where we are in space. So I think one of the ways out of this wilderness of so many different ideas about engaging our diverse community is to figure out where the heck we are right now.
I think that's a great
Great
idea.
idea. That's a great idea.
Part of that is the survey, but the idea of a diversity report card, I think, is a great one.
I think a survey could be included, it'd be part of the card. I would be willing to work with maybe somebody else here in coming up, doing a little research on what diversity report cards look like for nonprofits, for other communities that are using them, and then maybe a very basic, I'm not talking complicated, but a very basic recommendation to council to adopt a report card of that kind. So
Could we even do it?
We could. We could
I
develop
don't know.
something, you know.
Well, I think we could make the recommendation to council, and if we wanted to take that on, I mean, I'm certain that, well, I wouldn't say I'm certain, but
I think we could do a basic.
yeah, and I think that, I don't see why the council wouldn't be interested in something like that. I would hope that they would be. With regards to what you were saying, Barb, with a place where people could come and talk about issues, I think that's what we have when we have the good of the city. My concern with people come with an issue on the city staff is we can't discuss that item because it's not agendized. And we're really hampered by the Brown Act when it comes to that. We start to do that, and then we start to violate the law. And I think that certainly if people have an issue, they should speak a good of the city, and then it can be agendized for the next meeting. It also gets into a weird area with policy versus personnel, and we're never going to be able to get into personnel issues. Man, that's just the nature of working for a government agency. Is we're never going to be able to get into personnel issues. We can get into policy issues though, for sure. But I think certainly. I know it's difficult because we want to be able to address issues within the public, but we're kind of hampered by the Brown Act when it comes to discussing an item that's not on the agenda. And if there is an item, a policy item that somebody brings forth, I don't see why we shouldn't put it on the next agenda.
Yeah, we've done that. That's really how we got into rent review. If we did a report card, it could include some of the things I was talking about earlier, like training that's available, that's required, things of that sort.
I think that is, what currently is the training. I think that's important to find out what currently the city is doing and how they're training all staff on.
And how they're communicating to diverse groups. That could all be part of a report card.
Right. So kind of training, outreach, and I think composition. I mean, I think the best way to
That's what I was going for.
put pressure on, council to have a different composition in 2 years is to have a number that they know they're going to be measured against.
The difficulty, the flip side of that is the difficulty is how do you get a group of people to serve on a commission or committee, and that's the much harder aspect of it. But I think
You can't measure improvement unless you know where you're starting.
we have to know where we're at first. We have to have a baseline, and then we can start to move forward. And maybe that way we can start to think of what are some ways that we can do real outreach to different organizations. And maybe we do real outreach to the parent engagement groups at the schools and other things. And we do outreach to the University Village, and we do, you know, because that really, I mean, I've said this for a long time, and it's not just because I work there. It's the University Village is the most diverse community in Albany. So it's, you know, 3,000 people, and it's a very, very diverse community. And getting them engaged would be really good.
Just a little piece of information. The opening of the commissions did go to the Albany High School newsletter. So there was outreach directly to the high school for the openings on the commissions.
Okay, so let's try to summarize here a little bit. We're talking now about a survey. We're talking about a report card that would show involvement and would show training and all the particulars in terms of what the city should be engaged in.
A survey to the public, correct?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. And then this issue of overseeing, of looking at city proposals for legislation, for housing, et cetera, to see whether in fact they appropriately address social justice issues.
Or I would say, including housing, but not limited to housing, providing feedback on
Yeah.
issues in front of.
So it's an inclusivity, the inclusivity impact report.
Yeah,
Yes.
on any major piece of
Right.
of legislation. I'm happy with those.
Okay, I'm glad you're happy.
Shall we
Is it
move on?
possible, as a matter of dealing with Brian's, accurate point about, the limits of the agenda, can we have a regular agenda item that is discuss issues in front of council? Or does it have to be more specific than that? So that we don't have to be forcing onto the agenda the exact items that we might discuss.
No, I think you really have to stick to the agenda and the idea, because the public needs to know what the commission will be talking about. So if the item is vague and open to any
I meant
item.
discussing items that had come in front of the city council, not that had come in front of us.
For the commission to discuss?
Yeah.
Well, it would have to be agendized
We would have to know then.
at a future
that's what's
meeting.
coming, yeah.
Yes, and if the item is forwarded to the commission to work on, then it would be automatically, it would come to you as part of the agenda.
Thinking about the mechanism for us to provide the
How
kind
does this get
of report in a way that doesn't
Yeah.
lead us saying, now let's put on next month, at which point it's already,
It's
the
too
council's
late.
taking care of it.
Peggy has talked about wanting to see something like this. She's
Okay.
made that comment on several occasions in council meetings, that she'd like to see a social justice report as part of, as part of items for consideration. So I think there is interest in the council in having a vehicle for this, and we would need to know beforehand what the council's going to be working on.
Well, I mean, currently, staff reports include a sustainability impact report, so it could potentially be included as part of
Yes.
any staff report that the staff prepares to council. So it wouldn't just be, because basically whenever we write staff reports, we have to address the sustainability impact, if there is one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, we've got, I think, the outline here anyway, and this is, I think, an improvement over where we were.
Do
So
we want to
just,
consider asking for a youth member, or that's something we can take up?
That's a separate item.
Okay.
We should,
Before we move on,
Yeah.
we should have the public comment on these items.
are we done on this one?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Is there a policy in this town, I'm thinking there is, about how staff and people who work for the city treat people, and harassment or abuse or being rude or obnoxious or whatever, being bigoted? if there are rules in this town that say those are not good, those are policies. I don't see how personnel issues are separate from policy issues if those are policies that are in place in this town, or they ought to be. I personally have been abused by a person who works here emotionally, and I don't know where to take it. It is very upsetting. I feel this person has not been very nice to me and has excluded me from activities because for whatever agenda they have. Where do I take that? And if it was mentioned earlier that this might be a place to bring that as an issue, that's a policy, then you guys as social justice people should find a way to address these concerns, or let me know where I might go to address those concerns. But I don't think that policy is separate from personnel or the interactions that people have in a community or in the city.
Isabel, do you know what the policy is and what the process is if there's a complaint?
Well, if there's a complaint, it's to basically, I would say, go to the immediate supervisor of the staff that is, that if you have any concerns, I would just go to the immediate supervisor. And there are policies. I mean, there are, there is mandated trainings. I'm not well versed in all of the policies and trainings, but yes, as public servants, we do go by policies and rules.
So that ought to be part of what we're talking about here in terms of the report card. We ought to review the existing policies. We ought to see if they're
But there's a
appropriate.
thin line about talking about personnel matters,
Yes.
in public, which is not appropriate.
We can't do that.
Right.
Can't do that, but we can assure that the policies are appropriate and there's an appropriate place, for example, for somebody.
Certainly somebody, if they had a question, could come to the city manager, or send an email to the city manager, or call City Hall to find out, or to make, register a concern.
Yeah, oops, sorry.
Correct? I mean, they could contact you
Yeah, they
or
could-
the city
yes.
manager, or to
I mean,
raise
we
a
always
concern.
ask that, start with the immediate supervisor of the staff that is, you have a problem with the staff, and then see where that goes, yeah.
Okay, well, let's add the policy piece to our inclusivity discussion, and you're right, we absolutely can't talk about personnel issues here. We have no authority to do that. It would be a violation of law, I think.
But you can talk about policies that affect
Yes,
how they treat people.
yes, absolutely.
All right, so let's see, I'm trying to write as fast as I can. So appreciate the idea of being a social justice commission, and I agree with Greg that there should be a youth member. I actually, for the SEJC, when there were openings, I actually reached out to several people at the high school and got them to send emails to other people, and then I reached out to people whose children I thought might be interested, especially people whose children had children of color, because I was trying to, I don't know what happened. I don't know if they didn't get chosen or if they didn't apply. I don't know, but I did my best. But I think that's something, I understand when you say that it's up to the city council, Bart, and not up to you, but I don't actually think the city council is going to do it, so I think you should. That's what I think. I think you should maybe equivalent of coffee with the cops, only it'd be SEJC with the cops, and I mean with the public, you know what I mean? Like show up different places, just once a month you could rotate and reach out to people and say, we can't do this without you. That's what you need to be saying, is not, we want to be more diverse, but we can't do this without you, which is the truth. We can't. We're not doing a good job because you're a bunch of white people, and all the commissions are like that. So I think it's really important. And I think, I like the idea a lot of the diversity report card, and I think it's really important that you define diversity, because people manage to make that, like, smear it so it's so thin that it doesn't mean anything, so I think it would be important to say exactly what you mean by diversity. And I also think that when you're putting together how you're going to do the report card, it'd be great to get public input. At your Coffee with the Cops thing, you could do that. Say, we're trying to do this. What are the concerns that you have that you don't feel like are being addressed and you would like to, when we're assessing our city, what would you like to do? And then my final thing is, and also I think ask people why they don't join the commissions, why they don't apply. I think that would be a really, if you could personally ask people, they could probably tell you a lot about why they're not applying. And then finally, I know that you're familiar with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but I was wondering if there was some way that you could have something like that that stood for SEJC, that was like the equivalent of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says it's a human right, housing, health, education, food, or all those are basic human rights. So it would be so cool if you had something that was sort of the standard that you held everything up to. I mean, I think that's the direction you're going anyway, Bart, but it just reminded me of the wording in the declaration.
A definition of social justice, so we really know what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
There's one more.
One more, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'll try to say this so it makes sense. I've recently gotten involved in something in another group about white privilege, white fragility, and I'm just thinking about this. You've been talking about the makeup of this group and the city council in our city. And I was particularly struck when I just read Engage Our Diverse Community, community-wide inclusivity and so on. And what I've gotten into has been very eye-opening to me as a white male, privileged male. And I think it's a big issue. I just throw this out because I think it's something that fits into what you're all talking about here. And something as simple as Engage Our Diverse Community is a very nice white person's way of saying we're diverse. Done our job, we're fine. And I would say the truth would be engage our community, and then we go from there. I mean, language makes a big difference. And I look at the makeup, and several of you have mentioned this about who I am or who we are, and I think we really need to do more about that and reach out to communication or whatever. And I realize it's a big issue, and if it's like it has been for me to think about this or realize all the things I've grown up with are tainted by this, it's not an easy thing to deal with. But Albany likes to think we're the greatest thing going in some ways, and this would be a really good first step, a big one, obviously. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on to the last one. Is our stopping time, Isabel, is it 9 or 9:30?
9:30.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, let's see, promote health and wellness, that's the sugar sweetened beverage tax revenue.
You skipped over aging in place, just.
Is it, oh, I'm sorry, I was thinking of that as a new one, but where is it? Yeah.
It's under 2.2, it's number 3 under 2.2.
Yeah. And just to clarify, would you remove, under 2.2, would you remove 1 and 2 and replace it with what's been discussed tonight, the inclusivity impact report, the diversity report card, survey to the public? So we would replace those 2 items?
Yes.
Yes.
And add, and then keep, identify service needs to support aging in place. That's actually in the strategic.
Just a quick question before we go to, we already just did 2.3, did we not, before this?
Yes.
I'm looking if I'm reading 2.3.
You did it
Yes,
before,
yes,
so yeah,
yes.
So
I was going to say that.
Yearly.
I just want to make sure.
We're done with that one. So, aging in place. You want to talk about that?
Well, I certainly think it needs to be on the agenda,
Yeah.
on the work plan.
Yeah.
And do you want me to talk about that a little bit, what we were looking at?
Sure.
Well, the World Health Organization and AARP have both come to this standard for 8 domains of livability for seniors in a town. What are those 8 domains? What makes a place livable for a senior and allows them to have a good life there? So Bart and I were looking at that as a starting place. There's a great questionnaire one of the cities had that would be, I think if we could set a goal that we'd want to get like at least 200 seniors to fill out this questionnaire to find out where we're at with these 8 domains right now. Maybe we could get 100 that are active at the senior center and 100 who aren't. I mean, I don't think that's too big of a goal for us to take on. I mean, I would be willing to volunteer to go to the senior center and get people. It's a pretty lengthy survey, but the information is really good and necessary, I think, for us to go forward in what we want to do to make the city more livable for seniors.
I read through what Bart had sent out, the eight domains, and I looked for further information about whether anyone's actually done any testing about, do these domains hold up in the real world, or is it, is it a master's thesis that someone wrote was a good idea? I'm not disparaging it. I just, I hope that we can do some further literature.
West Hollywood has a great, working with those 8 domains, suggestions for what's going on in their city.
I'll look to that then,
Okay.
see if there's some more
That wasn't just
real-time,
off the top of somebody's head. They went through an intensive process to develop that. As we talk about this, it occurs to me the language of report card would work here too. If we can develop a set of standards for assessing what livability should be in a community for seniors. So it seems to me that part of what we need to do is identify the needs of seniors who are aging in place in Albany, particularly low-income seniors, and that we ought to develop a draft for an aging-in-place action plan and a report card. If you look at those 8, you'll see that there's some of those things that, that are very clear and specific that the city could do in terms of signage, in terms of street access, variety of safety, things of that sort, where, it wouldn't be very hard to say, what are we doing in this area? I was looking at the new Solano plan, for example.
Complete streets, yeah.
And it has very little to say about seniors at all. And there are some different needs that seniors have, which, we often see, for example, like the linear park. We see paths that combine pedestrians and bikes, for example, which is a very dangerous thing
For seniors.
For seniors,
Very,
yeah.
very dangerous.
So, all right, so that represents sort of where we are with that. Is everyone comfortable with that? Any comments? Okay, so I think that, have we gotten through all of them?
Is there number 5?
Number 5, yeah. Funding mechanisms to just ensure stable and effective budget. I'm not sure what part of that was assigned to us, Isabel.
Oh, it was, I struck it through because it's been done.
What about the low-income exemption?
Yes, so.
Okay, I do think it'd be good to review that, to review the low-income deductions, to see how that's working. We had a letter from Preston Jordan not long ago where he pointed out that a very small percentage of people are actually using those.
That's actually under 2.11. Provide input on outreach efforts regarding information on low-income senior tax exemption.
Okay,
so it's here, that's there.
So what was 5?
It was provide feedback on future draft policy to include evaluation of options for low-income exemptions as part of future tax measures.
Couldn't those two things go together?
No, this is about future tax measures, and the first one is outreach efforts to get people to take advantage of the exemptions of the programs.
So
they're different.
So it's both about exemptions, so it makes sense that might be one item? we can worry about that later.
Right.
Okay, before
There's
we,
no elections coming up.
before we close, I have a motion I wanted to make.
Absolutely.
I move that we ask the council to appoint 2 additional members to the SEJC, one being someone from the high school, and then another at the council's choice, an at-large person chosen by the council.
Okay.
Does anybody second that?
I'll second
I'll
that.
second
Okay, we got 2 seconds. All right, discussion?
Is this part of the work plan? Would that
No.
be part of a work plan recommendation? Because
We
it's
can't-
not on your
It's not on
agenda.
the agenda. And-
No.
That's right, so we need to
So-
agenda.
Agendize
All right,
that.
so we'll
And the-
agendize it for
and-
next time.
And the council did do a review of advisory body not too long ago, and I think that was one of the recommendations, but they didn't move forward with it. But if you want to.
Let's agendize that.
Sure,
Agenda items
yes.
for discussion, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that represents our agenda for tonight. So I would entertain a motion to,
I do have one further
have
announcement.
further
that-
announcement? Okay.
That occurred to me during the course of
sure,
discussions.
absolutely.
In relation to having student members or youth members for the commission, I was approached by Sebastian La Rosa, who runs the Youth and Government Program at the YMCA, and he reflected on the fact that he had received outreach from the council and from Peggy McQuaid for a youth member to join at some point in the future. So I think as we agendize this item going forward, we should consider the fact that the high school calendar doesn't coincide with the SEJC calendar, and we may want to have a term for a youth member that coincides with the school year. So just something
Yeah.
to include in the
That's a good idea.
conversation
Okay.
when we discuss it next time.
Likely to get a senior, and then they're likely to graduate in the midst of the next year. Right?
Or just not be interested in June in much of anything.
And before we go,
Before we go, we should, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd be, just one announcement. If anyone's interested in the 16th is the Albany Community Foundation and the Albany Education Foundation's Chocolate and Champagne Gala. And you can get tickets online through the Albany Community Foundation or Albany Education Foundation, or you can see me.
So just briefly, before we terminate, I should have asked, in terms of agenda items for next time, we will finish the work plan.
Yes.
We will talk about additional members for the commission.
Great.
Anything else anybody wants to add to the
No,
agenda?
one point is you should also decide who will be attending the workshop, the sugar sweetened beverage tax workshop, to present, if you want a member or two to be present and make a presentation to council. The recommendation will be included as part of the staff report, but if you want to be
I volunteer if nobody else
Thank you.
Okay,
wants to.
great.
Or
And if Judy can go with you,
But
that's,
if Judy could.
yeah, she'll see, yeah,
so Monday, April 1st.
Yeah, I can do that.
great.
Okay.
All right, that's, so the two of you will represent us. Anything else for the agenda for the next meeting?
I don't have.
No?
I think finalizing the work plan and,
Right.
Yeah.
and then discussing potential new members would be good. Unless,
And we'll have to, we also need to reorganize our subcommittees because we have new members. So that ought to be enough.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, can I just ask Isabel? So if we're going to talk about subcommittees next time and we want to put members of the public on a subcommittee, we have to notice that?
Not if it's ad hoc, right?
I know we have to notice meetings.
You have to do,
Explain that to me.
basically, a subcommittee that includes members of the public, it needs to follow the same procedure as a commission meeting.
Right.
Exactly the same way. So the meeting has to be noticed, and you have to follow the Brown Act during those meetings.
Right, okay.
So let's put the topic of public
let's-
members
Yeah, okay,
on the
because we've had-
agenda. And we can talk about how we would do that if we wanted to. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. So motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
second,
Party's
third,
over.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Aye.
That's right, we should say bye.
Yes,
That's
you're
right.
welcome.